Hello, and welcome to Alpha Insight Podcast, where I will be discussing real-world issues that need to be talked about. Here you will learn how to have a strong mind in a world of weak-minded people. I use not only experience and opinion to back up the topics discussed, but also statistics. I'm your host, Jamison Reiling, and this is the Alpha Insight Podcast. All right, so today we're going to be going into mental health. There's a lot to it. I'm actually not going to be using a script at all today, so that should be fun. But what I wanted to talk about to start, everybody has their mental health problems, right? We all kind of do. And that really makes us kind of limit ourselves as to like what we can do or what we will allow ourselves to do. An example of this is when I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder and generalized anxiety disorder, and I don't even remember all the disorders that I had, to be honest. There was so many, but those were the main ones. And when I got diagnosed, it's like I told myself, I made excuses for life, and I made excuses why I shouldn't push myself and why I shouldn't go for my dreams and work hard and get my goals achieved. And it gave me an excuse to basically do what I wanted to do, and stay where I was. And the more I look at it, it's like, it makes me so very upset because I feel like a lot of people, they get diagnosed with something and they give up completely. They're like, oh, well, I'm diagnosed with being whatever, fill in the blank. I guess that means I don't have responsibilities anymore. Or like, oh, I have anxiety, so I can't do this. Or they make excuses why they shouldn't do something that's hard for them. Or they make excuses to stay where they are in life or not make changes to better themselves. Like, oh, well, I'm diagnosed with being anxious and depressed, so I need to smoke weed in order to fix that because I'd rather smoke weed than be on meds. No, you have the whole system twisted and backwards because that's exactly what society wants you to think. Doctors, and psychiatrists especially, they are like, I think most of them, want to help, but I think they don't teach people the right things, So when I went into the psychiatrist, basically it was like, how are you feeling? And I'm like, oh, well, I'm sad and whatever, fill in the blank. And they would be like, oh, well, here's some meds that are going to fix that. Get better. And I was in a couple mental hospitals, and they did the same thing. They were like, the more meds they could get you on, the better. And I was on a lot of meds for a long time at very, very high doses. And I thought that was going to be me the rest of my life. I was like, well, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, and I'm this and I'm that. There's no fixing it other than having these meds the rest of my life. And that is completely not true at all. Nobody ever told me to work through my problems. They just said, here's these meds and you're going to be on them for the rest of your life. And so I thought, there was no cure for what I had. And I think a lot of people think that, like, oh, I'm diagnosed as a sociopath or I'm diagnosed as a narcissist. And once they get diagnosed, they just completely give up. They're like, oh, well, there's no point in even trying to better myself, or there's no point in trying to sober up. If I'm going to be like this the rest of my life, there's, why the hell should I even try if I'm going to be like this the rest of my life, It's so funny hearing people say that, because in my mind, I'm like, are you an idiot? You are believing exactly what society wants you to believe. It's insane. I just had a buddy of mine tell me, oh, well, I would rather smoke weed the rest of my life than be on meds or whatever. He told me, Jamison, I'm going to be smoking weed the rest of my life probably because he said it improves his quality of life. And he's like, I tried medication instead of smoking weed, and it didn't go well because it gave me worse, PTSD or whatever. And I'm like, oh, okay, so how long have you tried it? And he's like, it was about a week or so. And I'm like, okay, Okay. Well, I'm sorry to tell you, but meds don't really kick in until like 2 weeks of taking them every day. That's first of all. Second of all, he's told me before, how he's like, I don't really want to smoke weed the rest of my life, because it makes him like lazy or whatever. I don't really know all the reasons, and I know when I smoked weed, it was a bad deal. But he's like, man, I don't want to have to do this the rest of my life. I would like to do this, but I don't want it to be meds, because meds can make your situation even worse, and they can. I'm not gonna lie to you. I've had meds that made my anxiety a lot worse, or my depression a lot worse, or my crazy thoughts a lot worse, but it's for a couple days, and then you just change your meds. It's as simple as that. But he never really gave it a chance, and that's what was getting to me, because he was like, I gave it a week. Meds are not even going to kick in until 2 weeks of taking them, And so all this to say, what I'm getting at is once people are diagnosed with something, they just give up hope, which is exactly what I did. For so long, I gave up trying to better myself, and I gave up pushing myself and doing the things that are hard for me, that are good for me. And I was like, well, I guess I'm gonna be smoking weed the rest of my life. I'm depressed and anxious, which is actually I'm gonna be getting into this a lot more in later episodes, but I would make excuses for my actions, and I would blame it on. So I used to be very manipulative, right? And I could manipulate anybody I wanted into believing whatever I wanted them to believe. And unfortunately, some of those people were my parents on a daily basis. My poor parents had to deal with my shenanigans for a very long time, and it was a very awful time. But I would get caught smoking weed, and then, I knew their rules were set on it, and like any drug or anything, and I'd be like, well, I would lie so much to their faces, and I'd be like, well, it's not even my fault. I was depressed, and I've been anxious and depressed, and so I have to smoke weed. And they're like, oh, okay, so then should we take you out of therapy and take you off your meds so you can smoke weed instead? I'm like, wow, never thought about it like that. But no. So I was making excuses, right? I was diagnosed, and so I had an excuse to not even just my parents, to my friends. I'm like, oh, sorry guys, I can't hang out today. I'm depressed, and so I have to stay home and lay in bed and do nothing and be lazy. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it was bad. I'm not making that up. I was very, very depressed and very anxious, but what I'm trying to say is that's no excuse to give up. And I feel like that's where I disagree with a lot of people, because they get diagnosed and boom, there's no point in life anymore. No, even mental disorders can be changed. Like, you can learn how to live with your depression. You can learn how to live with your anxiety. You might even have it the rest of your life, but it will be, if you learn how to deal with it, it will not be nearly as bad, like, at all. So what I'm saying here is living with your emotions, you need to stop making excuses for staying in your same place in life. Stop making excuses not to go work your ass off. Stop making excuses not to achieve your goals, And I did that for so long. I was like, well, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I can't do it. Maybe one day when I'm happy. No, I'm never going to be happy. And stop. What are you doing? You're wasting your time. If you're going to be living in the mentality your whole life of my mental health is never going to be fixed, you know what? You're right. It's not. And not with that mentality. You cannot fix something unless you genuinely want to. I mean, and that's actually funny because it's like skateboarding. I skateboard, and sometimes I'll be trying to land a very scary trick, and I'm like, sometimes I'm just, maybe if I just get super close to it, maybe I'll just land on it and I'll just roll away. And that's what people do, That's what I do. I'm like, Maybe if I get super close to it and then bail, I'll land it miraculously. But that's never going to happen, you know? You know why? Because I know exactly that I need to commit to it, and I'm not. Same goes for, life and your mental health and working hard. You're not going to just nobody's going to miraculously get rich. Nobody accidentally gets a six-pack in one night, If you go up to somebody and talk to some dude that's jacked, you're not going to be like, "Hey, how did you get that?" And 0% of the time you're going to get somebody that says, "Well, I just woke up one day and it was like that." No, you know why? Because they had to work for it. And it's like your mental health is just like that. If you want to have a strong mental health, you need to actually work for it. If you want a strong body, you need to work for it. If you want to be rich, you need to work for it. It's not going to just it's not going to miraculously happen overnight. I'm sorry to say that. And let's say you win the lottery, right? You win the lottery, you're rich now, right? Several $1 million, let's say. How happy are you going to be with that millions of dollars? You might be happy for a while with it, but you might start to think, wow, you know what? I didn't earn this. I didn't work for this. Huh, And then I don't even know. It's going to lead to like entitlement. I think it would, I don't know. But I think if you want something to happen, you have to genuinely do it. You have to put in your all. It's like when I'm skating and I'm doing this scary trick, it's not going to miraculously happen. It's going to happen if I commit and put my feet on the board, if I give it that last 10%. And, a lot of people, they get so close to their goals right before they give up. I've been beat down, I've lost so many times. And when I was depressed, I was like, you know what? This is it. I'm done. There's no point in trying, okay. You don't even understand. You guys don't understand. When I say I was depressed and anxious, it was to the point where I couldn't get out of bed at all. I had to take time off of work. I had to skip school, skip work, skip everything because I was so depressed and it was so bad. I couldn't even get out of bed. And so you're telling me like, Jameson, you just don't understand, my situation is I don't have the motivation. Neither did I. I know what it feels like. I know what you're feeling, I'm not going to pretend like I don't know what you're feeling because I know exactly what you're feeling. I know what it feels like to be at your lowest point, but that didn't stop me. You know why? Because I decided one day, I was like, you know what? I'm going to get up. I'm going to push myself harder. I'm going to sober up. I'm going to fix my life, and that didn't happen overnight. I'm still working on bettering myself every single day. I wish I was perfect, but I'm not. But so like this gets me into the point that I wanted to talk about as well, about medications, psychiatrists kind of, and like if you've ever been to the correct terminology is a psych ward. If you ever been to one, you know that, it's the better of a person you are, the more meds you're on. And that's what they kind of teach you without saying it directly. They're like, the more meds you're on, the better of a person you're going to be, the better and healthier you're going to be. Have you looked into the meds that you're taking? A lot of them are so bad for you, you have no idea. And you're taking them every single day. Imagine what your kidneys and liver is going to be like in like 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Because I don't know, because you decided to just trust some guy that says he's a doctor, I don't know, maybe I'm just skeptical about things like that, but, I'd like to know what I'm putting into my body for long periods of time, But this brings me to, so they teach you, so first they teach you there's no cure for your your mental health, you are what you are for the rest of your life. And so people give up. That's the first challenge we have here. That's the first challenge is like, oh, well, I'm going to be like this the rest of my life. So I'm going to either start doing drugs or I'm just going to sleep all day and be like a loser all the time. Because I'm depressed and I'm never going to get better. Or I'm going to, yeah. And that's the mentality. So that's the first like hurdle we got to jump through here. The second one is the meds. So my opinion on meds is I think they can be very good, but I do not agree with how they're teaching people to use them. They're teaching people to use them like they're a drug and they need them. And if you don't have your meds that day, you're going to be so messed up in the head and you're going to be crazy. Like me, I was like, I'm on, antipsychotics, antidepressants, anti-anxiety, all the sleep stuff. What was the other one? More bipolar meds. And it's for a long time, I was, I would miss a day of my meds and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be so crazy. I'm going to be insane. I don't even want to see my friends. I'm going to be so crazy. And you know what? Like I was kind of a crazy person. I'm not going to lie. But it really made me, when I started getting myself off of them, it was like, wow, I'm actually my real self again. When I was on them for so long, I became the quiet person. I never said anything to anybody. I was like, just quiet. I was slow in the head, hard to process things. I don't know, stuff like that. I was kind of just like a robot. I had no emotion. Nothing ever. And when I started to wean off my meds, it was at one time I went 2 weeks without them and I was going nuts. The longer I went without them, the crazier I went, the more I talked and talked and talked. And still to this day I'm not 100% off of them, but I'm not even taking a fourth of what I'm supposed to be taking. So, and it's taken me a long time to lower the dose because I was on such insane doses. It was insane. And like I take half of the dose that I used to take, and now if I even take half of that, I'm like a complete robot. And I'm like, I don't even know how I used to take that full amount. That's insane. They literally give these kids, not even adults, kids, all these meds and tell them, you're never going to get happy. You're never going to be happy. Your problems are never going to be fixed unless you have these meds. So people give up and then they start to think, I mean, I used to think, why can't I be normal? I used to be so angry. So I used to be so angry all the time because I was like, why can't I just be a normal person like everybody else? This sucks. The way I see it now is I'm actually very thankful for my trauma and my past, because without it, I would not be the person I am today, I would not have the mentality and the knowledge that I have today. It's knowledge and experience. It's like wisdom. I would not have what I have today. And I'm not saying I'm a super wise person, but I'm saying I do know and understand a lot of things that a lot of people don't understand. And that's why I started this podcast, is because I went through it at such a young age, but I also came out of it at a young age. And I want to teach people how they can come out of it successfully, how they can deal with their problems instead of running away their whole lives, making excuses, and like making excuses to be on their meds their whole life, or making excuses to do their drugs or smoke weed, like whatever, their whole lives, I don't even know. You can fix your problems. Your depression will not be there forever. And, some things will trigger it more than others, but that doesn't mean it's going to be there forever. Sometimes you'll have to deal with it more than other times, but that doesn't mean it's going to be there forever. You can deal with it just like everybody else has to. There's no free passes in life. Why would you want to make excuses and sit around when you could be using this time to better yourself? And you don't even try to understand, You just ask the same stupid questions over and over again. You just ask, why can't I be happy? Or why am I so different? Why am I not normal? Like, bro, you are normal. Everybody, I say this a lot, everybody deals with everything differently. One person, something might be very hard for one person, and then it could be not that bad for another person. It's just we all take things differently. But the point of this episode was to tell you you're not going to be in this place your whole life. And I want you to know that. I was at the lowest of low points. I know what it feels like. I know what it feels like when you can't get out of bed, when you can't even smile, when you can't talk to people because you're just so sad. I know what it's like. But it can get better. And it's not going to get better until you decide you want to change. And I want to give you an understanding of, you don't have to be on your meds your whole life. You don't need these substances to make you less anxious or less depressed. That's just an excuse, Stop making excuses to run away from your problems and deal with them. I'm going to be going over, in further episodes, ways to deal with certain things, anger, depression, all that stuff. But deal with your past. Deal with your problems and stop making excuses to stay in the same place you've been in. It's like you're tied down and there's no escape. And my buddy told me, he's like, Jameson, it's gonna be impossible for me to stop smoking weed because I tried meds and they just made it worse, and I have to smoke weed or else I have PTSD and whatever. And I'm like, so what if you went sober, or what if you tried meds? He's like, well, then, he's like, it never goes away completely. But he kind of self-contradicted himself because he's like, it never goes away completely. He's like, you can live with your PTSD, but it's never going to go away. But I'm like, oh, okay. So then you're smoking weed all the time, right? But how often do you get PTSD episodes? Oh, once a week. Oh, okay. So then it's already still there. So then at this point, you're just lying to yourself and lying to everybody else, saying whatever, when it's not the fact that you just stop making excuses. You genuinely like to smoke weed. Just admit it. Anyways, I think the right way to look at meds is a temporary way to calm you down so that you can deal with your problems. But that's not what they teach you in, a psych ward or a psychiatrist. They teach you, here's all these meds, you're going to be on them the rest of your life. But what I genuinely think they're supposed to be for is they're there for a short time so you can figure out how to manage and control your emotions and deal with your problems, so it can mellow you out for a temporary amount of time so that you can think through and process things without you freaking out or whatever, And I think that's what they're for. But what they teach you is what they taught me. I know that is they gave me so much meds. I wasn't even a functioning person. I was a complete robot. I don't even what are they trying to do here? They made me somebody who can't even function, who can't even say a sentence, who can't even talk anymore because he's so full of meds. They're not teaching people to deal with their problems. They're teaching them to run away from them. And I'm telling you right now, that's not the way to live. Stop running away from your problems. I know it's hard. I've been there. I cannot tell you enough times. I've been in your shoes, okay? I know exactly how it feels. And I'm going to go into more stories about my depression and my anxiety, my suicidal thoughts, and all that good stuff in further episodes. But I need you to trust me. I know how it feels, and I'm telling you right now, you can get out of it. And stop making excuses, because that's exactly what I did. It's exactly what I did. I was so wrapped up in addictions and whatever. I was like, I even told my brother, I was like, I'd rather kill myself than stop smoking weed. It was that bad. But I'm telling you right now, it can be better. It can be. If you're willing to actually, what I'm trying to do here on this podcast is make you think about it differently. And honestly, that's apparently a chore these days because nobody wants to think about anything differently. They want to see it how they want to see it. And that's why I'm here. To make you question and think about things on your own without just believing every single thing that other people are saying to you or that you're watching on TV or whatever. Be strong. You'll get through it. don't think that you're not a normal person for having trauma and past and like issues from your trauma, because all of that trauma can be healed. That sadness, that pain, it can be healed, and drugs and meds are not going to heal that trauma and pain. It might be a bandage, it might be a temporary fix, but it's not going to heal the wound. And I'm here to try and show you how to heal the wounds without using bandages, how to get to the root of the problem, how to eliminate the problem, how to become a stronger person, a better version of yourself, how to understand things better, how to question life, how to question reality, question yourself, your brain, your own self. Because there's no growth and there's no learning, without questioning, without mistakes, and I've made a lot, and I've questioned a lot as well. But I'm here to teach you and tell you what works. I'm here to help. Thank you all for listening. I'm going to head out. Thank you for listening to the Alpha Insight Podcast. Today we went over the importance of understanding what the role is of medications and what the role is of diagnoses. It's a very, very important topic, and I think not a lot of people talk about it, which is why I went over it today. If you have any questions or have any tips or anything you want to hear about, any topics you want to hear about, be sure to hit me up on Instagram. You can DM me. It's at Alpha Insight Podcast. I'd love to hear some feedback. Again, thank you for listening, and have a great week.